Welcome back to Weekly
Weekly
Snap
Snap
episode 2. Today we're joined by me, Otto.
and Maggie. Today we have a few interesting topics lined up for you guys that happened in the past week. And yeah, which one do you think we should talk about first?
I think we should talk about the one that happened this past Wednesday.
Deportation?
Yeah.
Yeah. I heard on the news that it was on Wednesday,
hmm
around 100 deportees were brought back to India, and they were traveling by military airplanes, right?
Yes, that's what I believe so. Yeah, it was the U.S. had a plane from, I believe, was it Guantanamo Bay?
Yeah, Guantanamo.
Yeah, from Guantanamo Bay back to India.
Mm-hmm.
And in that plane, they had, I believe, around 100 migrants or so.
Mm-hmm.
And what was the problem again with the news?
The problem was that I heard that a lot of deportees mentioned that their situations on the plane, like they were not being treated properly, and they also had shackles on, which I was actually honestly quite surprised. Yeah,
Mhm.
and also they said even they everyone was shackled except the children, and even when they went to use the washroom, because it was like a how long was the flight?
Pretty long. If you're talking about from like all the way like from the US to India, it's probably about 40
40
hours. Yeah.
hours, yeah. So when they had to use the washrooms, the shackles were kept on, and that definitely was a huge problem, especially back in New Delhi. Have
hmm
you heard about what happened there?
No, I didn't. What happened there?
So basically there was an outrage, and then there was apparently people were also burning an effigy of Donald Trump
An
because
effigy.
yeah, of
Damn.
Donald Trump, yeah. Though I wonder, do you think that's gonna change any of the situations happening because of the
Um,
outrage?
I honestly, I, me personally, I don't think so. Like, I think it will cause, like, right now, it's obviously in the news,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
And a lot of people are concerned with it.
mhm,
But I think on the greater, like, actually changing anything
mhm,
regarding, like,
mhm.
immigration policies or anything, especially any, like, immigration policies between the US and India,
Yeah,
I don't think it will actually
it's
change
gonna be
much.
difficult to
Yeah.
actually change something.
However, I do think that this will have a definite impact on like um just like migrant attitude towards like coming to the US for
Yeah.
work, for example. And also people on the other hand, also people that live in the US,
Mhm, mhm.
how they view it as well.
Yeah, I was reading the news, and then one of the articles says that the Border Patrol chief actually said that it was one of the farthest deportation using military airplanes, and which made me think because using military airplanes, I would expect it to be quite costly, right?
It
So
is quite costly.
I was wondering, like, if there's a reason why they chose military airplanes over commercial ones.
I think it has to kind of do a little bit with like the
Security, you think?
security, yeah, because the people that are in charge of a lot of this, like immigration policies and
Mm-hmm.
deportation
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
specifically, is I believe the America's Immigration and Customs Enforcement, right?
Mm-hmm.
And generally, this enforcement has a lot of ties with military because a lot of times these migrants want to come to the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
and they come all the way to the U.S. Now they don't want to leave as easily,
Right.
and so sometimes the Americans see it as like you need to use military efforts to kind of uh, deport these people back to where they come from.
I would imagine speed would be also one of the factors that they chose military airplanes because even using military airplanes, the plane ride was still like 40 hours.
Right,
So,
right.
yeah, and I guess that would kind of like it would make sense why they would choose it, even though it's like I think probably 5 times more costly than using commercial airplanes.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's something to think about, right? Because like a lot of times using military resources
Mm-hmm.
for this, it's very costly. And a
Yeah.
lot of these funds, it makes you think that a lot of these funds could have been allocated to
Yeah.
other areas that that America could use.
Right.
And this could like lead to perhaps a little bit more of an economic burden.
Mm-hmm. On taxpayers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
on taxpayers
Yeah.
especially. Yeah. I would also see that if speaking like economically, I think a lot of businesses could also get disrupted if these businesses relied a lot on immigrant labor.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times immigrant labor compared to like local labor,
Mm-hmm.
people choose immigrant labor maybe
Yeah.
because of skill, but also a lot of times it's considered a lot more inexpensive compared to localized labor.
I know some of the more majorly impacted industries would be construction and
Hmm.
also agriculture.
Right.
Yeah. So, yeah, I know. So, can you tell me more about maybe how it would impact the companies or like the employers that are hiring these people?
Yeah, I'd say that a lot of times these employers were just they look when there's some things that migrant workers have that are kind of like intangible
Mm-hmm.
ones, like as I said, inexpensive.
Mm-hmm.
But I think also that specifically with Indian migrants
Mm-hmm.
workers, a lot of them are very savvy in the tech and STEM
Mm-hmm.
fields,
Mm-hmm.
particularly, and a lot of times these workers, whether they're like illegal or legal, they contribute a lot to U.S. innovation.
For sure.
By this news of the fact that so many of them were deported back to India, and
Mm-hmm.
especially with these claims of mistreatment, a lot of Indian migrant workers will now probably feel a little more deterred to coming to the U.S. for work, and
Mm-hmm.
this could, lead to a lot of kind of ripple effects throughout the economy.
Right. Interesting. You know, I was thinking how this event, this like geopolitical event, would probably also lead to some doubts for businesses in maybe they were considering investing in India.
Right.
So like this could probably bring out some doubts or then some hesitations.
Mm-hmm.
But I also believe that next week when the Prime Minister of India and Donald Trump meet in
They're
Washington,
meeting next week.
yes, I
Oh.
think next Wednesday, I believe,
Mhm.
um, this will definitely be one of the topics that come up. Because,
For sure, for
yeah.
sure. So after hearing about these recent news, what do you
Mhm.
think would be like the overall financial cost of mass
Financial.
deportation and like the impacts on the U.S. economy?
Mm. Financial impact, I think, yeah, that's really important because um, I would say, because I know if US were to carry out this entire mass deportation regime, it would probably cost around $88 billion.
Hmm.
So it is a lot, and it's a big number that for us, it would probably be hard to imagine. But if you think about it like this, $88 billion is around four times more than the budget that NASA has, as well as around three times more than how much the federal government is spending on child nutrition, and 18 times more than how much the world is spending on cancer research.
Wow,
So
that's actually
if you think about it, this is a whole investment that definitely will put a lot of burden on taxpayers as well as the government and the country as a whole. Yeah.
wow. What would you say are like the impacts on maybe migrant workers in the
Hmm.
U.S.?
Hmm. So there's around 5% of the entire labor in US that consists of immigrant like illegal migrants. So yeah, I would expect there to be a labor shock. And what do you know if some of the impacts that would probably occur?
Um, well, as you said, 5% of the entire America's labor force is dependent on these migrant workers. And so I think a lot of them would be a little worried now about necessarily their stability
Hmm.
in
Hmm.
America, right? They're thinking if these people get deported, like, maybe I could be next year. That's always maybe like some inherent thought in the back of their minds.
Hmm.
But also, this could also deter other migrants from coming, but
Hmm.
I'm not so sure about that as much. It would more because some migrants be like, oh, okay, maybe I wouldn't want to consider coming
Hmm.
to America. Um, but I think this is more of directly affected people that are already in the United
Hmm.
States,
Hmm.
and
For
they would
sure.
be like wondering, like, okay, what am I gonna do
What's gonna
now?
happen next?
Yeah,
Yes.
and I think also this might in long term it might affect just worker dynamics in general. There could be a lot more localized American citizens and that are being hired now
Hmm.
because there's less migrant workers. But on the
Hmm.
other hand, this could also raise labor costs. So this could
Hmm.
be worse for businesses. So
Hmm.
really, it will take time. Right now, there's not really like a big impact right now, but over time, we'll get to see what the impact of this is.
Yes. Both the labor workforce. and industries and everything.
Mhm.
So yeah, I guess
I think honestly, something I think we'll have to wait to see is kind of see what next week when the President Trump
and
and
Prime
the Indian
Minister.
Prime Minister meet
Hmm.
because they're definitely going to talk about this
Yeah,
news.
and I heard that so far Indian government they have not really raised too much doubt or had a more
Concern?
concern
Yeah,
about it. So maybe that would change in the coming weeks, and we'll look forward to that.
yeah. So
Okay.
we'll wait and see.
Yes. Moving on to our next discussion.
We're going to talk about the recent uh,
Delay.
delays in tariffs between the U.S., Canada, as well as other countries involved.
Yeah.
So as we know, the President Trump imposed a tariff, 25% tariff on Canada and Mexico, as well as also a 10% tariff on China. And he's already threatening like tariffs on other countries, such as countries in the EU. So recently, Canada has been part of has fired back with a 25% tariff, and this has actually ended up with a kind of delay in tariffs. And right now we have about there's a
It's a
30-day.
1 month delay,
It's
right?
about yeah 30-day
So
1 month delay in tariffs, and so in this time they're gonna try and negotiate with each other.
yes, I think they're gonna negotiate about border security in terms of drugs and like fentanyl and everything.
Yeah, so
And
from what I've heard, I think it's like a what the US not sorry, what Canada and Mexico said is they would both contribute some money. I don't believe I remember exactly from Mexico, but for Canada I believe it was around $1.3 billion to kind of increase border security, work with the US on border security, also stopping the flow of fentanyl into the country.
yes,
And
though I think even if they reach a deal, some of the tension would still continue
right.
before they review their I think it's a 5-year-old free trade deal, and it's called the United States Mexico Canada Agreement, and I think they're gonna review it in mid 2026. So I think before that, even if they came to an agreement, there would still be tension. You know.
Right, but this delay does have some like
Yeah.
good parts to it, right? It kind of like it doesn't have to disrupt both Canada and Mexico's economy right away, right? At least there's some time to maybe like prepare for this potential economic disruption.
And some flexibility.
Yeah, and also like Canada and the United States have always had a very long-standing relationship, and so maybe delaying this tariff and giving time to negotiate will perhaps help preserve the relationship between Canada and America.
Though, what do you think about China? Because I heard that they their 10% retaliation of the tariff on US is going to take place tomorrow, actually. Like, they decided it only minutes after Trump announced that they were going to put a tariff on China, and then it's going to take place tomorrow. So, what do you think about that?
I think that's going to be very interesting considering that there are many goods that are manufactured in China that the US uses, obviously, right? And also the entire world uses. And so the fact that Trump is putting a tariff on these goods will be very interesting to see what the effects are. I will say though that I have heard recently in news that some despite these tariffs, there will be some ways that Chinese companies Chinese companies will try and bypass these tariffs through perhaps maybe like um, smaller shipments or like shipments with a bunch of small goods that are like that aren't necessarily worth taxing or putting a tariff on.
Though I do believe that the 25% tariff on Canada and Mexico are going to have a more profound effect, I would say. Maybe not, I'm not quite sure about long term wise if you have anything in mind, but short term definitely. And what do you expect as a Canadian citizen for this?
Well, we'll have to see. We'll see what happens as a result of the negotiation that's taking place in these next couple of days in the near future. But hopefully, there won't be that bad of an economic impact. I hope that things, when I go to the grocery store or I go to like any like department stores, I go buy stuff. I hope that things aren't like even more pricey than they already are because I feel like things are already pretty expensive now
Pretty
because of
expensive, right?
inflation.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. What do you think would be the impacts for someone like you?
Honestly, just like what you said, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, as university students, groceries, second year, I'm gonna have to start buying a lot of things and
Mm-hmm.
then cooking at home. So definitely fingers crossed that the groceries mainly aren't gonna be too expensive. And yeah, just like you said.
Okay. How about let's go back to a little bit more big picture. I feel
Mhm.
like if even despite there being a negotiation period, I feel like there's still a threat of retaliation from both Canada and Mexico
Mhm.
against the U.S. after
Right.
this negotiation. If the negotiation period
Didn't
doesn't
go as well.
doesn't go
Yeah.
well, yeah, because Canada just kind of within a couple of days of the U.S. announcing their tariff, they kind of fired back that they would also be putting a 25% tariff on the United
Yeah.
States.
Okay, so regarding the question you asked about retaliation, I think maybe there would be a possibility where Canada and Mexico kind of work together to combat this issue of U.S. placing high tariffs on them. But at the same time, it is also unlikely because U.S. is the biggest economy in the
Right,
world,
right.
and they kind of help connect Mexico and Canada together. So yeah, so it might be a little difficult, but it could be a possibility. And another thing is perhaps Canada could partner with the EU. Do you think that will kind of help strengthen political relationships, or
I
is it
think
even a
that's I think
possibility?
that's a possibility. It's not a very high
Mm-hmm.
possibility because honestly, I'm not part of the kingdom. I'm not sure exactly what they're thinking, but that could be possibility that Canada just as retaliation they start seeking more economic ties with
Right,
other countries,
right.
such as the
And
EU.
not just be so dependent on the US, right?
Yeah, I think that that's something that a lot of countries in the world now are already starting to think about, right? With America brandishing a lot of these like tariffs and also other necessarily like not necessarily threats, but also just like things they want other countries to change. So like the thing with NATO and trying to get countries that are part of NATO to increase their spending. I think that America's trying to is becoming a lot less globalized. They're kind of deglobalizing in a sense.
And yeah, as you said, for a really long time, I feel like US was very globalized, but
They're kind of
recent
leaning,
years they're de-globalizing, I
and
would say.
I'd say the countries are becoming, not the countries, sorry, the U.S. is becoming a lot more isolated, and so the fact this change in how the U.S. is interacting with other countries is very interesting, and it will affect kind of the whole world.
I
Uh,
would say, yeah, specifically because China also recently they've been focusing on their own manufacturing process, and countries like US have been quite dependent. So I think that's something that the US is focusing on, trying to change that and focus more on regionalizing. I don't know what's the word, but yeah, yeah,
localizing their
localizing.
manufacturing.
Yeah.
So honestly, again, we'll see how this works.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully the negotiation period with
Will
Canada, the U.S. and Mexico goes well.
kind of ease some tension. Yeah.
Yes, and
Okay.
then hopefully that they will resolve it. But regardless, we'll see how it goes with the countries decide to do.
Okay.
So the last topic we're going to talk about today are some companies reported earnings from this week and potentially the upcoming week.
Yes. So the first one that I want to focus on is actually McDonald's. Some of the companies that are similar to McDonald's, like Burger King, Jack in the Box, In and Out, also kind of because of inflation cost and margins, they're not it's not particularly in their favor right now. And however, I still have quite a lot of faith in McDonald's, because I noticed they're trying to, even if there's some market setbacks or drawbacks, somehow they still are always able to come back up. And um, in the case of McDonald's, right now, they're trading at $294. And if they were to dip or go back to, let's say, around the price of 245 to 250, which was around June, July in 2024, it's still a manageable amount. So, and I remember not long ago, people in the Middle East, they were also boycotting McDonald's.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, now it's gone back up. So really, there's not a lot to worry about when it comes to McDonald's. But the thing about McDonald's is that they are a real estate conglomerate. So it means McDonald's owns a majority of their franchise restaurant. And it indicates that the franchisees pay rent to be able to run the stores. So
Right.
it means that McDonald's actually has a lot of rich assets on their balance sheet.
Right.
Yeah. And I could see that McDonald's is definitely growing to become I guess it's like continuous growth. So, so we definitely don't have to worry too much about it. And right now, the payout ratio is at 62%.
62.
Which has been growing its dividend. McDonald's has been growing its dividend since 50 years ago, and you could see the consistent growth. So I think it will be a great choice.
There's a lot of good things about that you're saying about McDonald's recently. However, there is a trend recently just that consumers are kind of looking to more healthy options. They're very focused now on having better health. You know, a lot of them are people are going to the gym. They're going out for runs. They're trying to eat more healthier. Finding healthier food options, such as that are not necessarily what McDonald's caters to their consumers.
Right.
So, how do you think this will affect McDonald's bottom line?
That's really an interesting point because not only that, but also inflation. As you said, a lot of customers are more wary, I guess, of going out and eating and spending so much money.
Right.
But as I said, even if there's times where perhaps customers are not really liking the menu options that McDonald's is offering, or the situation that we mentioned just now, McDonald's will always come back up, and fast food is always an option for people. And I personally, I don't think the industry of fast food is ever going to really die down, even though people are definitely more aware of health and choosing healthier options in general. So I don't think that would be as big of a concern. So Otto, what are some of the companies that have been on your watch list recently?
One company recently has, for me, that I've been paying a lot of close attention to is DoorDash. DoorDash is scheduled to release their fourth quarter and full year 2024 financial reports this upcoming Tuesday after the market closes. Some things that are of note is that DoorDash will be talking about their revenue, their expected revenue for the upcoming year, revenue from last year, as well as their profit margins. Some things that a lot of investors will be looking at for future revenue growth is how DoorDash is navigating their non-restaurant delivery focused verticals, so things like grocery delivery and as well as their advertising. DoorDash has really been focusing a lot on television advertising, so a lot of people that use DoorDash now, they're kind of expanding on that age demographic by targeting these television advertisements to people that are maybe of an older age demographic. They're trying to get a more rounded base of people that use DoorDash. Again, they're trying to expand out of just solely being known for restaurant delivery. They're expanding into grocery delivery, and how successful they can be in grocery delivery and expanding these verticals will be very telling for their revenue growth this year. Is there any other companies that have been on your watch list?
Other than Coca-Cola, the other one that I was kind of paying attention to is Humana. So it is a company in the health and insurance industry, and they don't operate on the commercial side. They're more focused on catering towards Medicare, Medicaid, as well as what is called TRICARE plans. So TRICARE plans are for military, and then Medicare for the elderly, and then Medicaid for the lower income families. And because they rely on government subsidies and payback, so definitely they will encounter some highs and lows. But I think the interesting thing is that even if the government and the federal government is talking about cutting down on unnecessary expenses, I feel like healthcare would be an industry where they will not be able to cut down, similar as maybe perhaps military investments. I don't think
Hmm.
they won't cut back on these more necessary things.
Right.
And for the longest time ever, though, Humana has kind of skyrocketed. But once this narrative entered politicians and the younger generations, I feel like the industry is not doing so well, the health and insurance industry. However, their competitor called Molina Healthcare, they actually posted their earnings last week, and then they kind of hinted at the fact that they were struggling a little bit just because they lost their contract with Virginia. So their earnings per share didn't quite reach where the analysts were expected. So this kind of posed an opportunity for Humana to enter another region, or perhaps, yeah, an opportunity for them. So even though the industry is not doing better, but Humana would be a better choice amongst the other. So yeah.
So after everything you told me about Humana,
Mhm.
it's very interesting. However, something that has happened in the news recently is that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Was appointed by President Trump to be
Right.
the America's new um, Secretary of Health and
Yes.
Human Services. And this guy, Robert Kennedy Jr., he's very opposed to the influence of pharmaceutical and insurance companies for healthcare, like Humana,
Right.
because he argues that the companies like these prioritize corporate
For
profits
profits.
over public health. So, what do you think would be the impact on a company like Humana with this guy's appointment?
Mm, that's a great question. And I think because of his prioritization of, as you said, uh, public health
Yes.
over corporate profits,
Yes.
I think demand for Humana will definitely decrease. And in response to that, Humana might have to adapt to probably offering more supplemental insurance, or
Mhm.
perhaps come up with um, individual plans that are catered to specific individuals to kind of gain this competitive advantage back.
Right.
And I would also say that Humana will probably have to invest in being more innovative in a sense, and they also have to be careful with their reputation, because you don't want to you want to line up with the expectations and ethics of the general public, right?
That's a great point that you make, Maggie. However, I feel like there is a growing dissatisfaction among the U.S. public with the current healthcare system, and this could lead to a shift in public opinion, where private insurers will like Humana will face a lot more, or not a little, a lot more public pressure to reduce costs and improve their patient care.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't do this, I think the public may react in a very negative way.
Yeah, I think one of the major examples would be when the United Healthcare CEO got
Yeah.
assassinated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When that, yeah, in New York, and I think I don't know,
Mm-hmm.
2 months ago. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's something that
We should keep in
we
mind.
should keep in mind. Yeah, and then most obviously, Humana will not have such extreme lengths happen to them.
Hopefully, yeah.
But that is something that they're probably keeping in mind, and things
Yes.
that they will want to keep in mind for the upcoming financial year.
And that's it for the company's earnings report and the episode for this week.
Thank you very much for listening to Weekly Snap with Otto and Maggie.